A crack of gunfire splits the trees. Something falls. Something that was a wolf. And then it wasn't. By nightfall, there's a knock at the door. A father asking for his boy back. The moon is full and the woods are listening.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and I hope you're not experiencing too much of the post-Halloween blues, because I'm here to make sure the Halloween spirit haunts us all year long. And tonight we have a very hair-raising story to make sure you feel afraid to go back into the woods. But before we get to that, I want to say thank you all so much for spending your October with me. It was an incredible experience publishing 31 shows in 31 days, and you may have noticed that yesterday there was a brand new show on the Weekly Spooky feed. It's called This Week in Horror History, and we'll be publishing it every Tuesday to celebrate the history of horror movies, books, TV shows, video games, as well as the people who create them. So make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app, and while you're at it, leave us a 5-star rating if you haven't already. And a special thank you to Savorista Coffee for supporting the program. They feature bold and flavorful coffee in half-calf and decaf, but without sacrificing flavor or complexity. If you head to Savorista.com and use promo code SPOOKY at checkout, you get 25% off your order, and it supports Weekly Spooky directly. That's Savorista.com, promo code SPOOKY. But now, as for tonight, imagine the woods after sundown, where every branch looks like a claw and every shadow breathes. Two hunters take their shot, only to learn they weren't the only predators in the wilderness. What if the thing you wounded could wear a child's face? What if his family could find your home and your child before dawn? Gone Hunting by Morgan Moore. The sounds of repeated cracks pierced through the area. "You hit it!" RJ exclaimed emphatically. Mitchell McCormick grinned as he looked at his friend. The sounds had come from his rifle. Mitchell and RJ were out hunting, and the day had been rather lackluster. It was near twilight, and they were close to leaving their hiding spot when RJ spotted movement in the distance. It was unclear what kind of animal it was, but it was worth a shot. Mitchell had tracked the movement through his scope while RJ tried to follow more closely with his binoculars. It had been a hard prize to track, even with both of their eyes on it. Whatever it was had moved quickly, almost inhumanly fast. What finally gave it away was a small glimpse of fur. It wasn't much, but it was all Mitchell needed. After all, hunting was his family's pastime, and he had learned it at an early age. "Let's go claim our prize," Mitchell said, and the two hunters descended from their perch and headed towards their kill. The two men approached the spot where they determined the animal had been shot. To their surprise, it wasn't there. Instead, they found a trail of blood. "Must have had enough strength left to try and escape," RJ said. "Try is the key word. If those shots didn't get it, the next one will," Mitchell said as he playfully held up his rifle. RJ chuckled. The duo headed down the path of blood-stained earth, with the amount of red growing in volume as they moved on. Mitchell noticed that not only did the amount increase, but the way it was lying on the ground became more and more sporadic. Whatever he had hit must have, in its escape, thrashed around on the ground. More than likely he hadn't hit any vital organs, and the animal was in agonizing pain. It wouldn't have to suffer much longer, though, he thought to himself. Their path soon came to an end, and what they saw caught them off guard. It was not at all what they had expected to find. What was lying on the ground, quivering and writhing in pain, was an inhuman sight, but also human. "Dear God," RJ began, before stopping to vomit. "God has nothing to do with this," Mitchell continued. Their prey was something that looked like an average wolf, which wouldn't be too out of place. After all, the hunting grounds were located in a forest, which made it plausible that a wolf could wander in and become a trophy. But this dying beast was not an average wolf. While it had wolf-like features, it was also clearly something akin to a human, and it was becoming more so as the seconds passed. RJ and Mitchell watched in disgusted horror as the creature morphed into a more human shape, a smaller shape. What lay before them now was a child of no more than 10 years old, whimpering, naked, and bleeding out. "What the actual hell is that?" RJ exclaimed. "I couldn't tell you," Mitchell responded hoarsely. "How does what RJ couldn't find the words. Mitchell just stared at the sight before him. The child continued to whimper. Mitchell gulped hard and turned his head away. RJ looked at him, eyes wide in disbelief, knowing what was coming. Cracks! The whimpering stopped. "Let's get this to the truck. We can handle it when we get back to my place," Mitchell instructed, coldly. He slung the strap of his rifle over his shoulder and approached the body. RJ moved and took hold of the feet, Mitchell taking hold under the arms. They hoisted it up and carried it to Mitchell's truck, throwing it in the bed with their gear. Mitchell then took a tarp he had lying in the corner of the bed and draped it over the body. The pair got in the pickup and drove off, leaving the hunting grounds behind them in a cloud of dust. An hour later, Mitchell pulled into his driveway. RJ and he looked around the area before getting out of the truck and picking up the body. Cautiously, they carried it into a shed and laid it on the ground. "What now?" RJ asked, solemnly. "We leave it here for now. We go in, have dinner, and when Jude and Sam go to sleep, We bury it, Mitchell explained. Bury it? Where? RJ questioned. Anywhere. Worry about it later, Mitchell said, before leaving the shed. RJ looked at the tarp-covered body and then followed his friend out. The sun was only a soft pink glow as the McCormicks and RJ sat down at the dinner table. Mitchell ate his food slowly and quietly, only speaking when his wife Jude asked him the occasional question. RJ picked at his food, the image of the dead boy still fresh in his mind. His stomach reacted in disgust. Jude began to notice as dinner went on. Everything all right? Jude asked. Oh, yeah, just kinda not all that hungry, I guess, RJ said, with barely any thought or attachment to the conversation. Is something wrong? I've never seen you barely eat, especially when it's something I make, she said. Don't mind him. He fell into a deer while we were out, Mitchell explained. He glanced at RJ to keep him in line. Yeah, I fell into some deer that had been eaten away. Had to wash up at a pond nearby, RJ added. Sam, the McCormick's 4-year-old, pushed his face into his plate. When he brought his head back up, it was covered in the group's dinner. Fell? Like that? He asked. The adults laughed at the child. Yeah, something like that, RJ told the tyke, his spirits rising a little for the moment. Their laughter was interrupted by a thunderous knock at the door. The table went quiet as they listened, the knock coming in intervals of 5. RJ turned to look at Mitchell. Mitchell sat there, quietly and sternly. The knocking continued. Well, since nobody else wants to get it, Jude finally said, breaking the silence. Jude leaves the table and heads to the front door in the other room. From their seats, Mitchell and RJ hear her open the door and speak with whoever is there. Their words were too quiet to hear, but the voice Jude spoke to was clearly masculine. Mitchell, somebody wants to see you, she called from the other room. Who is it? He asked. A Mr. Holloway. He says it's something hunting related, Jude replied. Mitchell and RJ looked at each other. The duo slowly stood up from their seats and made their way to the living room. When they reached the door, Jude left them. Standing there was a tall, muscular man, dressed as if he had just walked out of a classic Western. His skin was tanned and his features were dark. The eyes, though, something about his eyes made the two men feel like they were being set ablaze. May I help you? Mitchell asked the man. Indeed. My name is Thomas. Earlier today, you two were out hunting. You shot something you shouldn't have, Thomas explained. And just what would that be? Mitchell questioned. My boy, Thomas said bluntly. The two men look at their visitor. Mitchell stands cool and collected. Any shock that he had was well hidden. RJ, however, was struggling to keep it together. Thoughts of what might happen played out in his head. Sweat flowed from his pores, and his body began to shake. He looked over at Mitchell and found him staring back, disgusted RJ's eyes drifted to the stranger. He was staring him down. "Don't pay any attention to my friend here. He's got a stomach bug," Mitchell explained. Thomas scoffed at the explanation. "Is that so?" "Yeah, had a bad burrito off a food truck earlier," RJ stammered out. "Sure. Back to the matter at hand. My boy, give him back," Thomas commands. "Now, exactly why do you think we have him?" Mitchell asked. Thomas stepped up into Mitchell and RJ's faces. "Look, I know what you did. You shot my boy dead. Then you brought him back here and hid him. This is your last chance to do the right thing. Give me my son, or else." Thomas's words were direct and filled with threatening menace. RJ felt himself shrink at them and found that he was no longer filled with anxiety about being found out, but instead with fear of what this man was going to do. The complete opposite of him was Mitchell. He smirked a little and stared down at Thomas. "You don't scare me. You have nothing anyway. If you did, you would have brought the police with you. But by all means, keep threatening me, my friend, and my family. I have your boy, you say. You think I have his dead little body hidden somewhere? Then by all means, look for it. You won't find anything, and then I'll have you arrested for harassment. Better yet, I'll shoot you dead for your threats, and everybody will say I simply stood my ground. Your call." The two men continued staring each other down, neither wanting to give an inch. RJ stood there watching as the two carried on, waiting and praying that someone, something, would put an end to this. He got his wish. "Daddy, can we play?" Sam ran up to his father and locked his arms around Mitchell's legs. The child then looked up at Thomas, the stranger staring down at him. Mitchell looked from his son to the man who was threatening himself and his family. "Who are you?" Sam asked. "A friend," Thomas replied. He looked over his shoulder and watched as the sun started to set. "Just remember, you had your chance." With that, Thomas turned around and left. "Daddy?" Sam asked. "Yeah, Samo, we'll play. I'll meet you out back," Mitchell told him. Sam ran off, squealing in delight. Mitchell closes the front door and turns to look at RJ. "What are we going to do?" he asked. "You're going to stay here tonight, and we're going to wait for this asshole to show up," Mitchell explained. Crickets chirped as night drifted along. Inside the McCormick's living room sat Mitchell and RJ, each with a cup of coffee and a rifle. After their visitor had left, the duo took care of the body, burying it far out in a field behind the McCormick's house. They planned to simply wait and see if Thomas would show up and make good on his threat. If he did, Mitchell planned on dealing with it. RJ, though, was uneasy about the whole thing. To him, they should have simply confessed their crime to Holloway, and whatever would happen would simply happen. But Mitchell wouldn't allow it. He wanted the thing, the situation, everything to be buried and long gone, so everyone could move on. RJ knew Mitchell would easily get on with life. He wouldn't, though. The sight he saw earlier in the day would stay with him forever. RJ couldn't get the image of the boy, the thing, out of his head. He never would. Guilt flowed through him, and as the night went on, he felt an overwhelming desire to either run or turn the rifle on himself. He felt disgusted with what they had done and told himself that when he went home, his friendship with Mitchell, his association with the McCormicks, were done. A wall clock ticked away, and RJ found himself looking at it. Its hands told him that it was 1:30 in the morning. Sunrise was still a while off, and he hoped that that might be the end of the situation. Whether or not Holloway would come back, he decided, would not be his problem once morning came, and he was able to distance himself from Mitchell. "Are you awake?" Mitchell asked his friend, catching him staring at the clock in a trance. "Yeah, just seeing what time it is," RJ replied. "You better not fall asleep," his friend said. Mitchell wasn't just telling him, he was commanding him. "Mitchell," RJ said. "Yeah." "What are you going to do if he doesn't come tonight?" "Forget about the whole thing and move on." "What I mean is, how do you know if he doesn't come tonight, that he won't keep it up? He could try to start something whenever or wherever." "I'll be ready," Mitchell responded, coldly. RJ sighed. "Is it really going to be that simple, though? We don't even know." He stopped mid-word as a cry tore through the house. The two men stood up. RJ wanted to ask where it came from, but had no chance before Mitchell raced out of the living room and was beelining to the stairs. RJ followed after him and did so until the duo were in Sam's room. The window was smashed open, and Sam's bed was empty, with his blanket and sheets thrown about. Jude came running up behind them and pushed her way into the room. At the sight of the empty bed and smashed window, her face twisted into horror, and her knees shook until they gave out. The distraught mother fell, unable to scream for how terrible the situation was. RJ went to lay a hand on Jude's shoulder to try and comfort her, but was whisked away by Mitchell, the latter dragging the former back down the stairs and out the front door. "Where are we going?" RJ asked. "After them," Mitchell replied, and while tempted to question who exactly they were, RJ knew he meant Holloway and Sam. The two stopped once outside and listened for any sign of where to go next. Their answer came from a scream, and in an instant, Mitchell was sprinting off behind the house and into the countryside. RJ looked to his friend and then to the truck they used earlier in the day. Two thoughts entered his head: take the truck and get the hell out, or use it to cover more ground. As much as he wanted to leave Mitchell and distance himself from the whole affair, it was Sam who was in danger. Little Sammo, whom RJ had known since he was born, and was a surrogate uncle too. He returned to the house and got the keys to the truck, then raced like a madman to it. Inside, he turned the key and brought the vehicle to life before speeding off into the darkness of the country. Mitchell charged through the country in pursuit of Sam, his son, the scream being his only guide as to what direction to go. He had to give Holloway credit for not only making good on his threat, but for the extremity of how he was going about it. Unfortunately for him, however, his only reward would be a bullet or two punching through his head. Mitchell looked briefly at the full moon in the sky before another scream directed his attention to a line of trees. His brain didn't have to do much work, and before he knew it, his legs were carrying him to the tree line, past it, and forward, deeper, into the wilderness. Soon he found himself in a small clearing, encircled by trees, the sky clear as day above. Those details were trivial, though. Most important to Mitchell was that in the clearing with him was Holloway. "There you are, you son of a bitch!" He greeted his enemy harshly and raised his rifle and set aim. "It might be night, but I have a scope to help me see you in the dark." "I've been waiting for you, McCormick," Holloway said calmly. He was shirtless. He also noticed no sign of the boy. "Where's my son?" Mitchell demanded. "It isn't important," Holloway answered. "I beg to differ, asshole. You broke into my home and took my kid. Where the fuck is he?" Mitchell fired back. Holloway scoffed. "I seem to remember you not wanting to be quick to answer questions like that when I first visited you. What's your point?" "The point is, you know what I want, so I'll ask you again. Where is my son's body?" Holloway demanded, and something in his voice sent shivers down Mitchell's spine. "I told you, I don't know what you're talking about." Mitchell was determined not to say what happened, even if it killed him. Holloway sighed. "It appears we're at an impasse then. I'll ask you one more time, and your answer is going to be what decides how the rest of your night goes. So I suggest you think long and carefully about how you answer. Where is my son's body?" Mitchell believed what Holloway said. Something in the air, hunter's instinct, if you will, told him that something was about to happen. Internally, he found himself at a crossroads of either owning up to the hunting accident, which was now surely going to look like murder due to his actions, or continuing to deny it happened at all. The only problem was, Sam wasn't accounted for. If Mitchell continued to hide the truth, knowing where or how his boy was going to be nigh impossible. Holloway made that much clear. But maybe there was a middle ground he could use to his advantage. "What would you say to a compromise?" Mitchell asked. "Oh?" Holloway replied. "I think you and I both know what happened earlier today, and that means you and I know how unique this situation is. Let's stop pretending that we don't. So I tell you what, if you tell me where my boy is, I'll tell you where yours is. We both get what we want without any bullshit. Sound like a deal?" Crickets chirped in the night as the only breakers of the silence between the two men. Through the scope, Mitchell could see that Holloway was putting some thought into the offer. A small smirk formed across his lips, and Mitchell became suddenly aware of the area growing quiet, animals seeming to evacuate the scene. "McCormick, I must admit, you're dumber than I thought. Trying to phrase what I've been telling you as if it was your idea, just because of how unique the situation is, shows just how little you actually know of it, and just how bad off you are." Nature seemingly ceased then, and everything was still, deathly still. Mitchell had lived through moments like this when out on a hunt. There were moments when one would become hyper-aware, and it was as if they had slowed time and everything else. Normally, Mitchell had experienced that when in the position of the hunter. Now, he felt as if he was being hunted. Through the scope, he saw a glimmer in Holloway's eyes that confused him. He lowered the rifle and saw the amber glimmer, clear as day, in the eyes of the man in front of him. Then, another set appeared behind Holloway, and before he knew it, there were glimmers of amber all around him. But that wasn't what horrified Mitchell. It definitely caught him off guard, confused him, and had him cornered. No, what petrified him was the change he witnessed happening to Holloway. The hairs on his arms seemed to grow out of the flesh that was becoming darker in tone until it looked as if he had fur warmers on his arm. Hair growth wasn't just on his arms, though. It was rapidly happening over his chest and face. Yet, what caused Mitchell's stomach to fall further into a pit of unease was the physical shifting of the man. The muscles across his body grew in inhuman size, and the sound of bones cracking and popping in and out of sockets as the limbs and fingers extended. Such was the physical growth that what clothing Holloway still had on was ripping at the seams before becoming tatters. The boots he wore lost their toes as Holloway's digits pierced through the leather, but most shocking was his face. It morphed into an elongated shape that was an unholy combination of man and animal, teeth growing to shocking and sharp lengths, akin to a saber tooth. And then he, or it, roared, and Mitchell felt his bladder release in response. Transformation complete, Holloway started towards Mitchell. Instinctively, he began to fire at whatever it was he was facing. But no matter where he aimed, the bullets caused little to no damage. Mitchell knew he couldn't waste all of the ammo in his magazine. Hell, he didn't even have another one on him. The only other weapon he had was a hunting knife, and something told him it wouldn't do much good. Suddenly, Holloway stopped his movements towards his prey and made a sound that Mitchell could only liken to a demented laugh. He was confused by the laugh and the stopping of pursuit. That quickly changed as Mitchell saw the other amber glimmers move out of the tree lines and into view. Each set of amber belonged to a creature akin to Holloway. Now it wasn't just his bladder that emptied, but also his bowels. Mitchell understood before, when he saw the gleams, that he was in trouble. When Holloway morphed into the being in front of him, he knew he was out of his league. Now, though, Mitchell knew just how grave the situation truly was. RJ sped through the country when he heard the sounds of gunshots. At first, they were steadily paced, and then there was silence. The gunfire sounded frantic until it ceased, and a blanket of quiet covered the night. It wasn't one of calm, though. RJ figured the gunfire had to be from Mitchell, but that left the question of why it went from steady to hectic, and just what exactly was going on. That and why RJ had a feeling in his gut that his friend was dead. It was these thoughts that caused him to nearly miss the silhouette of a human as he drove. Luckily, RJ braked and maneuvered the truck to where the headlights could illuminate the shape. "Oh, Christ! Sammo!" he exclaimed. It was indeed Sam, and though he looked startled, he didn't appear to be harmed at all. Scared witless and pale, with dark circles under his eyes, but not hurt. "Get in, Sammo. I'm getting you back home to your mom," RJ told him. "What about Dad?" the boy asked. RJ felt the sting of uncertainty as to what to say. His gut told him one thing, but he knew in his heart he had to tell the boy something more optimistic. And for all he knew, maybe Mitchell was alive, and the crazed gunfire was him cutting loose on the man who had terrorized his family. "Once I get you dropped off, I'm going to pick him up and bring him home. He went out into the woods to find you." Sam nodded and walked to the truck and hopped in. RJ turned the vehicle back in the direction he had come and sped off towards the McCormick home. He prayed he was wrong about his friend. Oh, he still planned to cut most, if not all, contact with Mitchell, but concern for somebody you care about is eternal, and he wouldn't wish Sam to grow up without a father. RJ thought of nothing but getting the child home, and then finding his friend. The thoughts kept him centered and tunnel-visioned on his goal, so much so that he didn't notice or pay attention to the odd amber gleam in Sam's eyes. And even if he saw the boy from behind, he most likely wouldn't have given much thought to the marks from animal claws or the bite marks at the base of his neck. He would have only assumed they came from his kidnapping. But Sam knew darn well where they came from and why they were there. Thinking about it, he started to laugh in the soft way a child normally does, and looked at the man he had known since he was a baby. The man, oblivious to it all, including the growl beginning to mingle with the laughter. And that, my spookies, is why you never assume the woods will keep your secrets. If you're heading out under a full moon tonight, count your shots, mind your footsteps, and don't answer the knock unless you're sure it's human. I also want to let you guys know this Friday, I'm sitting down with Andrew Shearer, arts and culture reporter at Athens Banner Herald and OnlineAthens.com, as well as a good buddy of mine, for a special retrospective on 6 years of Weekly Spooky. So if you want a peek behind the veil, that show is just for you, so make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcasting app. And if you love what we're doing here at Weekly Spooky and want to support us in a very direct way, just head on over to WeeklySpooky.com/join. For as little as $1 a month, you get 2 bonus episodes every single month, as well as my undying gratitude. And I want to say an extra special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their names at the end of the show. And they are Johnny Nix, Kate and Lulu, Jessica Fuller, Mike Eschewey, Jenny Green, Amber Hansford, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much. And if you want to hear your name at the end of every episode of Weekly Spooky, just head to WeeklySpooky.com/join and sign up at $15 a month or higher. You'll also get your 2 bonus episodes every month and over 5 years of exclusive audiobooks and creepypasta readings. That's at WeeklySpooky.com/join. 90 other spookies have signed up, and now is the perfect time. I would consider it an early Christmas present. But now it's time for me to get back to work. So many more scares as we head into the holidays. So for myself, for my executive producers Rob Fields and Bobbletopia.com, my producer Dan Wilder, and of course my creepy composer Ray Mattis, I'll talk at you next time.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.